from Infowars.com. We'll actually show people the article of this. The secret behind SOPA. It's the end of the internet as we know it. And it goes on, the secret behind SOPA, the so-called anti-piracy bill. This is an Infowars.com article, up at Infowars.com and Prisonplanet.com. If you want to find this and get it out to people, if you want to get this out to people, you can basically go to the site, get it, and email it out to folks so they understand what's really happening. The secret behind SOPA is the so-called anti-piracy bill, which is today the target of an unprecedented backlash with WikiLeaks and other major websites going dark to protest the legislation, has nothing to do with piracy or copyright theft. It's all about the formal effort to mimic Communist China's system of internet censorship. But don't take our word for it. Listen to what Joe Lieberman, and you can watch the clip right there, co-sponsor of the PIPA and SOPA sister version in the Senate, said about the purpose of the behind the U.S. government's efforts to control the internet under the guise of cyberspace. Lieberman characterized fears that the U.S. government would use such powers to censor political content as total misinformation. That's how they always do it. They say total misinformation, but then admit it. Yet goes on to admit that the purpose behind the agenda to mimic China's ability to disconnect parts of the internet in case of war, adding, we need to do that here too. That's the quote. Of course, Communist China's war is not against foreign terrorists or hackers. It's targeted against people who dare to use the internet to express dissonant voices against government atrocities or corruption. China's system of internet policing is about crushing freedom of speech and has nothing to do with legitimate security concerns, as Lieberman well knows. And again, the big IT companies created by DARPA, created by the CIA, funded, given the big contracts here in the United States and Europe, are the very groups that help build the great electronic Berlin Wall of China. This is on record. And I told you for years this is how they would come after the web in the name of copyright. And they're now doing it, when they've got all the other laws that amply deal with that and more. The different takedown notices, the Digital Millennium Copyright Act, all of it continuing, having largely failed in its bid to use fears over cyber warfare, bearing in mind it was the United States and Israel who launched the Stuxnet attack to achieve the ultimate goal of internet control. Lieberman has returned with the same agenda, only under different guise, the Protect Intellectual Property Act, of which he is a co-sponsor. I'm going to give you the latest on this. Then big news with Iran. Iran threatens to torpedo U.S. aircraft carriers. 3 U.S. warships stationed in waters near Strait of Hormuz. Ron Paul has filed suit against someone. We'll tell you about that. All right, let me do this. I want to get back into how the system intends to try to maintain control over information and how the so-called establishment mainstream media is teamed up with government and has an incentive to go along with this to shut down their competition. The arrogant system thought that it could sell the public and the world on a curtailed, censored, gatekeeper internet under the guise of cybersecurity and copyright. But the world is not buying it. The people are not buying it. And this is just another example of how every time humanity stands up, we are having success. We're having victory. In fact, I have a special report that I shot yesterday with Aaron Dykes that we're going to have ready tomorrow that basically breaks down the fact that humanity is rising, humanity is waking up, and that 2012 is a year when the tyrants are coming out into the open out of a desperate need to try to dominate humanity back into submission. But the fact that on Monday, the Congress people supporting the SOPA bill and other accompanying legislation came out and said, okay, we're going to shelve it for now. Now, that was a possum move, and I said that on Monday. Now they're back saying they're going to try to vote on it on the 24th next week. But it's still a victory that they're having to go from openly promoting it and saying, yeah, it's for your own good, to saying, okay, we're not going to sign it right now. We're not going to try to pass it right now. Remember when they were having trouble with the NDAA and secret arrest of citizens? Obama came out and said, I'll veto that. People were like, oh, well, problem solved. Let them pass it. And I was like, he's going to sign it. He's going to sign it. So you do need to contact the criminals in Congress and let them know that you're aware of the fact that you're aware of their crimes and that they want to start shutting down free speech because they're desperate. But let them know that the genie is out of the bottle, that you're aware of what they've done. But more importantly than any of this lobbying, the Congress critters and the District of Criminals up there in D.C. is to appreciate alternative independent press, whether it's talk radio, internet, whether it's that radio show you listen to locally, or whether it's a national show, or whether it is a website you visit, or whether it's an author. As free speech comes under attack, we either all stand together or we hang separate. And this is an issue, just like the TSA groping and humiliating people, that transcends party lines, ideological affiliation, religion. And it's something that really unifies people on basic issues of freedom. And it is that brotherhood, that sisterhood, that common humanity of us coming together that scares the globalist more than anything. So, learn to flex our muscles. Learn the power we have by voting with our dollars and with boycotts and with blackouts and with demonstrations. But more importantly than all of that, exercise your free speech, or what does the old cliche say? Use your free speech or lose it. Use your muscles or lose it. Use your brain or lose it. All the studies show, chemicals included, but Alzheimer's is accelerated by being lackadaisical, by watching a lot of TV, by being passive, by not challenging yourself, by not doing word puzzles, number puzzles, by not doing new things. The system, while I support internet freedom, and while I want to keep it open and free to the extent it is now, because it's not totally free, as you know, understand, though, the globalist social engineers did design it. And it has backfired on them in some ways. They're not God. They're not in total control. But listen to me carefully. In the Pentagon's own words, in the reports we've broken down, we're going to do more reports on this in the future, they admit it's going to be a surveillance system, worldwide wiretaps, what they called it. That's the WWW, the joke. It's not World Wide Web. It's worldwide wiretap. And it's a web that captures you. When DARPA invented this and the CIA deployed this in the 60s, they always planned on using it, not as an emergency communication system that they told you about. That was the public rollout. But as a system to have NSA capability, not just on faxes, phone calls, and radio transmissions, and UHF, VHF, but to have everything we do in commerce be digital. If you want a cashless society, you've got to have a really flashy roach trap that tricks people into going into it, that everything gets onto, so then you can take control through that of the entire grid. All right, I'm going to give the phone number out when we come back, get into all the really big news on Iran and more, and Ron Paul.
We're on the march, the empire.
Look, here's the bottom line. I want to try to make this as just simple as I can. There is a scientific dictatorship of eugenicists who believe they're better than everybody and who have a disdain for humanity. And we live in a organized, planned society to a great extent. The New World Order is the attempt worldwide to force compliance within the confines of that structure. And then by increment to beta test and sell the public on going deeper into it. And what's happening is, as I pointed out on the nightly news last night, we're going into a Praetorian class type system, just like with the Romans, where the gentry class, it was known, did whatever they wanted and told the low-level minions what was going to be done. And everything was about submitting to that authority. And that's what police checkpoints are about. That's what government henpecking everyone is about. That's what all the regulations are about. That's what the police bugging their eyes out at you and the TSA groping you and your wife and your children. It is about, hey, we're in your comfort zone. We're coming to your door and saying, we're here to give your child shots, even though there's not a law, because we feel like it and we got guns. Hey, we're going to raise your property taxes to where you can't pay for your land. We're going to take it. We don't care. Hey, we're going to increase yearly your electricity bill by 80%. It's for the earth. Publicly giving it to big mega banks. Hey, we're going to give General Motors and others giant bailouts to move to China and Brazil. General Electric is going to move their X-ray division to China. I mean, every day I see articles where Republicans and Democrats vote to fund moving our jobs overseas while telling us all day they want to give us jobs. The United States, you judge a tree by its fruits, has gone from the #1 most educated, #1 longest lived, #1 in patents, #1 at the Olympics, #1 in every category 60 years ago. #1 admired, the most freedoms, the most private property, the wildest culture, the best literature, everything. America was the gold standard. Now under New World Order control, 60 years later, roughly, we are #1 in obesity, #1 in cancer, #1 in diabetes, #1 in heart disease, #1 in birth defects. Look this up. #1 in autism. #1. We are below, and I see the numbers of 60th worldwide, but they're not counting some other third world countries that are above us. But we are at least number 60 in longevity and health in the United States, from #1 to number 60. We are a petri dish. We are being tested on. We are being manipulated. I mean, every day I see government reports coming out admitting the #1 cause of polio worldwide, I've got one here today, is the vaccine. In the government, in UN's own report, World Health Organization. I know for a fact the vaccine makers aren't just screwing up with all these vaccines, adding other viruses and other RNA and DNA and microplasms. They're doing it on purpose, and I've got all the documents. I showed them again on the nightly news last night. I mean, I know this crime is being committed. But your average doctor down the street, your average doctor is just compartmentalized and believes whatever the American Medical Association and the American Pediatric Association tells them and the American Psychiatry Association tells them, and they just do whatever they're told. And as their patients have convulsions, or as nurses get paralyzed at the hospital, or as their own child gets damaged, most of them cannot admit to themselves